You're listening to Brick by Brick, a podcast by the Brownstone Experience. I am Felicia, and I will be interviewing women of color entrepreneurs at the table. We'll learn more about their entrepreneurial journey, lessons they've learned, and tools they use to remain successful. Enjoy. Hey, Mayor Rachel Proctor, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well, making it through this Friday.
Yeah.
Yes. And so thank you for joining me here at the table. We recently were just on the couch before this episode, and now we're at the table where we're going to focus on your entrepreneurship journey to share with the ladies who may be an aspiring entrepreneur, current, frustrated, all the things.
All
right?
the things.
And so I'll start with asking, because you have been a lifelong entrepreneur. You've never worked in a corporate role. And so you have a lot of experience, and that is a very unique experience, I believe. Definitely probably the minority out of most of the Black women. And so what would you say are some of the misconceptions of entrepreneurship?
I would say probably the biggest one that is a misconception, and I see it and hear it all the time, and that's that people believe that there is this unlimited amount of freedom you have when you become an entrepreneur.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would even argue that I wouldn't trade being an entrepreneur for anything, but you have probably less freedom because you're now more accountable to other folks, right? The decisions that you now make impact other people's life, especially when you start hiring employees and you have all of these people depending on literally the decisions that you make every single day for the livelihood for their families. Like a lot of people are able to support their families because of the work that you're doing every day. And people think that, I'm going to just quit my job and I'll be able to make my own schedule, which all of these things are true, but it's not to the level. I think there's that's not right away.
Yes.
Right. It's not, you quit your job and then you start you change your Instagram bio to CEO and now you just free to do, free to do whatever you want to do. It's not like that, because literally, for an entrepreneur, while sometimes on a corporate job, which I don't have a lot of frame of reference, but I can imagine on a corporate job, oftentimes your paycheck does not necessarily depend on your level of productivity, right? It's not necessarily a reflection of that. But in the entrepreneurial world, it is absolutely a reflection of that, in terms of what you make and how you build your business and whether or not it's sustainable, right? So I think that's probably the biggest misconception I think that people have.
I love that. Yes, because when in corporate world, when you go on vacation, you're on vacation.
Yeah, and a lot of times on paid vacation, you got time off. And you don't miss any of it, right?
Yes, and you checking customer service and all the things when you're an entrepreneur on vacation, or you calling it vacation, but that's not truly.
You don't really ever. So I don't care. And right now, even with even one of my businesses, which is my school, which has actually been in my family for almost 30 years now. Even with that, it is. I've been blessed to be able to be an absentee owner. My business partner and I, which is my sister, we've been blessed to be absentee owners, and we've had really good success with just having a really awesome staff and folks that we can really depend on. But even with that, when you step away from it, it never really leaves your mind, right? It's always in the back of your mind, because that's your blood, that's your sweat, that's your tears, everything that, you put everything into it. And a lot of times your employees don't really necessarily understand that, because they can walk away from it and go get another job somewhere. Yeah. When you, as the entrepreneur, it's everything you've worked for. And it's not that easy for you just to pick up the pieces a lot of times if something happens or anything like that. So you really, even on vacations, a lot of times you have to make yourself leave it there and just kind of take some time to not really think about it.
Yes, absolutely. With that being said, we are Black women, of course, born that way, right? What would you say is one of the key differences that we should think about, Black women, right? We're talking to our own community. What would you say is a key difference in being a Black woman entrepreneur than the picture that's put out in America as an American CEO? So that's usually a white male. And so we hear, or, social media or whatever, even Shark Tank, a lot of times the show can be frustrating for me, because I believe that they're just received different, from the investors, from the audience, but that's just not our story a lot of times. So, what would you say are some of the key differences as a Black woman CEO, that we can think about, whether you're going into it or if you're already into it?
I would say that I think one of the glaring differences now that that's starting to get more light shine on this disparage, right, is that while Black women are starting businesses as at a higher rate than any other people group, right,
Yes.
we're the least funded in terms of just capital that's put behind our businesses. And so just kind of knowing that going into it is something that I think anybody, but especially for Black women, need to be aware of, because even though it doesn't feel good and it's not necessarily fair, a lot of times we've got to know what we're up against when we're getting ready to take on these challenges. And not even just knowing what we're up against, right, but also looking at ways to, I think we always find a way, right? So even if it's
Absolutely.
not the funding and things of that nature, I think we need to look at ways again to help find a way to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish. And a lot of times that comes with working together. And I think I talked a little bit about in the other episode, talking about just relationship building from that aspect in terms of getting your business off the ground.
Yes, so building relationships. There are a lot of programs out here that are intended to help us to find more funding. But I think at its core, organically, you can get into a business and not realize the amount of capital it takes to keep a business going. I know personally, I jumped out. Okay, I got $20,000 saved. I'm ready. But after year one, and you've built a business, because it takes businesses like 3 to 5 years to really become profitable in some cases. So I totally agree. And then, the saying is, they can, write an idea down on a napkin and get $1 million funding.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that's not always our
That's not always our
situation.
story. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So keeping that in mind, I hate to say having your ducks in a row, because it won't ever be a perfect time. But I think looking at some of those, the finances of your business or your idea before you hop out, is definitely one of the key differences.
So I will say to that point, you brought up something that I really thought about a lot, especially during the pandemic. One of the things that became very apparent, and we know that there are a lot of things from systemic racism and just a lot of disparages that we deal with, even as it became to access to funds, even during the pandemic, a lot of the emergency funds, PPP loans, the emergency assistance loans, a lot of that capital. And we know that there are some things that, we've talked about it kind of here today, but a lot, also what I did see, and you kind of touched on it, was a lot of entrepreneurs were really not ready to play at that level from even having the business acumen they needed during that time to be able to compete on that level, even if it was just on paper. Because what you had was a lot of entrepreneurs that would not be paying themselves to keep from paying taxes on one end or this or that. It was just a lot of things that were happening. And, while they had a great business going, a lot of things, or they didn't have their financials, or just, they didn't have the language, they didn't have the banking relationships at the time to really go in and be able to talk to their banker about how to access these funds. And so one of the things that I'm a huge proponent of always being a student as an entrepreneur. Like even though I've been around entrepreneurship all my life, a lot of lessons I had to learn the hard way, just by not really counting up the cost before I jumped out there to start a business endeavor. I can think of one that I probably fell the hardest at. When I look back on why that was not successful, it was really simply put because I did not do my due diligence on what I was doing. A lot of times, again, and I'm a minister as well. Like I said, I'm a preacher's kid. So sometimes we can over spiritualize what it really takes for your business to be successful. Oh, I'm going to start this business. God got me. I'm walking by faith. Well, also walk by faith and make sure that you get your financials and get you an accountant and get your business plan down on paper and make sure you have money saved up and look at what it's going to really take for you to really launch that venture before you step out there fully, right? A lot of people, one of the questions that I get asked a lot from new entrepreneurs or people that want to be entrepreneurs is, what do I need to do first
Yeah.
to be an entrepreneur? And a lot of times the with what we want to do, a lot of times it's not the gap is not that far to be able to achieve it. But we need to look at what it will cost, right? Like, look at what all of this costs. Look at what it takes for you to live, right? Look at all your expenses, all the things that you have, and really looking at what it takes for you to live, and look at creating you like kind of a leave number, right? If you want to quit your job in a year, look at what you have to have saved, or look at all those things. But really looking at your life, what you're trying to accomplish, and really getting a high level picture of that. And a lot of people don't do that because they're so enamored with the result, which is this business, but they fail to look at the work that it's going to take to get there. So I always say, don't focus on the result, focus on the work that it takes to get there.
Yes, I laughed because when you said that, my response was, "That'll preach." But and that's just real, And you say God got me, and or God gave me this idea, but the work,
Still have to do the work.
you still have to do the
Faith
work.
without works is dead.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We were just talking about the lessons and the failure, which again are one and the same. As an entrepreneur, how would you say you can avoid some of your blind spots? Because they happen, right? It's a juggle. You have your ebbs and flows in business, but sometimes I think you're just hit with like blind spots. What are some of the practices that you use to avoid some of those blind spots?
In this season, for me, blind spots are sometimes inevitable, but for me, I think there's ways to reduce them. And that for me is very simple. Get a mentor. Get somebody
So
that's
good.
gone down the path that you want to go in. I always say, I have this analogy that I like to use with tour guides versus travel agents. And find you a really good tour guide. To me, a travel agent is this person. If we've ever had a travel agent to book a trip for us, they're the person that actually, they can book you on a trip and send you somewhere, but they're sending you sometimes to places they themselves have never been. So when you get to the place they sent you, a lot of times you get lost, right? You can get lost, or you don't know where to go, or, things happen, or, all these things can happen, and there's nobody there with you to show you the way and help you navigate the place that they've now sent you to. But when you've ever had a really good tour guide, I don't know if I've had some great tour guides when I've been on trips and vacations. Your tour guide is the person that's out front, right? And they've been to the place that they're guiding you through time and time again. So they can tell you the lay of the land. They can tell you what to expect while you're there. They can tell you about all the history of those things. And they're the person that can help you because they themselves have walked that path many times before. And so I always say in business, find you somebody that is willing to be a tour guide for you, somebody that has been down that road time and time again to help you anticipate the blind spots, and that honestly can help you accelerate your success. Of course, everybody's got to go through the process, right? But help you accelerate yourself and help you skip over sometimes what for me, a lot of times were growing pains for me. And I tried to accept them as such. But now that I'm going into different business endeavors where the stakes are a little bit higher, I cannot afford to not have a tour guide on this journey with me in this leg of entrepreneurship now.
That is so good. That is so good. I think that that's also a lesson if you're looking for it on how to be a mentor.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
To be a tour guide.
To be one,
Because a lot of
yeah.
people are like, I don't know what to do. I got my own stuff going on. What do I do? Be their tour guide. And then also look for a tour guide. That is so good. And then I think that the last question, which is really important, again, as Black women and being entrepreneurs, how do you practice self-care and how do you prioritize self-care?
Sure. I think for me, because I was a person who did not essentially I would say just my journey of leadership in general, right? A lot of times, again, we feel like if we're not doing something or if we're not busy all the time, that we're not being productive. But I've learned, especially during the pandemic, I think it was this slower pace and just really slowing down to speed up type of a thing. And so really valuing the blessing and sometimes just slowing down and taking some things off of your plate. I think a lot of times when you use the word prioritize, which brought this thought to mind, but we talk about prioritizing things. Really, all prioritization in a nutshell is sometimes moving number 7 up to number 1 spot. But how many times do we stop and slow down long enough to ask us, does number 7 even need to be on the list to be moved? Right? So looking at a place of purposeful prioritization in terms of like what is the least amount of things that I need to do to get me the greatest results. Like looking at the 80-20 rule, right? Looking at that 20% of work that's going to get you 80% of the results. And a lot of times it's not as much as we think it is when we talk about what do we absolutely have to be doing to get to these things that I want to do. And so really looking at, for me, in this season of life, for me, is really just setting very firm boundaries.
Yes,
First with
boundaries.
myself,
Yes,
right?
Lord.
So first with myself, and not really succumbing to this idea that everybody's problems and emergencies have anything to do with me.
Even at
It's just, I'm sorry that you're experiencing that right now. But however, I'm not able to, and maybe and for me, a lot of times because I do like to be helpful and be resourceful, but I'm learning right now, for me to be helpful doesn't always mean I'm the one doing the helping. Right? Maybe there are kind of responses that you have. If somebody asks you this, then you may be able to point them in the direction for that. If there's things that people are always asking you that you're no longer able to really dedicate time to, because anytime you give time to something, right, you're taking away time from something else. Whether that's your own self-care prioritization or just working on your own goals or whatever that is. And so for me, I think self-care for me has really even just been time to do nothing.
Yeah.
Because that's always been a struggle for me, right? It's I had to feel like I was doing something, or sometimes there were seasons of life where I had to be doing something all the time. When I was in survival mode, a lot of times I had to be doing something. So I've really come to cherish those days when I just get to sit at home, sit on the couch, and look
Watch your
at TV and
movies.
watch a movie, sit with my two little Frenchies, and we hang out all day, and we don't really do a whole lot of anything. And that's really been good for me in this season of life when there are a lot of things and a lot of competing priorities for my time are happening. Just taking that time to just chill, however that looks for you. That may be going to take a walk or a run or a hike or doing something that helps to enhance your mental health. And sometimes just walking and looking at nature, all of those things have really been something that I've grown to really cherish. It doesn't have to be super fancy. You don't have to go get your nails done or your hair done and have a spa day for it to be self-care, right?
Yes.
Self-care looks like a lot of different things for me in this season.
We were just talking about our fave Malik, right? And
Yeah.
on that live, she was saying that she really regrets or dislikes that a lot of things around soft life as Black women nowadays have to do with money and buying things,
Yeah.
right? The things you just named, when really they can be as simple as chilling, right? As clearing your calendar for the day so that you can do nothing. And so I wish that for all of us that we learn to do nothing and to do less, because that truly is more. Is there anything that you would like to share that you would attribute to your success as an entrepreneur today?
Ooh, I would say probably for me now is really learning how to use my natural skills to build a business on. And what I mean by that is things that I kind of took for granted, that I was doing naturally, that I could monetize without having to look for a lot of other ways to get it done. Like simply the knowledge that's in my head actually can be transformational to somebody that is a client of mine. And so really learning how to take that and really looking at myself and changing my mindset and looking at myself as an expert on the things that I'm an expert on. And sometimes we shy away from that, and we kind of imposter syndrome creeps in when we talk about calling ourselves an expert at something. But really, and I could be oversimplifying it, but honestly, really being an expert, all that means is that you know more than the people that you're teaching, right? Sometimes we look at, oh, well, I'm just a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10 in this subject matter expert. Well, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are not the people you're called to. You're called to 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you're a 5 on that scale, then you're teaching 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you are an expert to those people whose lives you can change with your experiences and the things that you know, being a tour guide. You can throw that back in there. Yes. But just really learning, I think, how to really use my skills and letting that be enough. Yes. And realizing that is enough, right? To change somebody's life or to change my own life, from that aspect of being successful in business.
Yes, that ties into so many things that we touched on, right? We talked about each one, teach one earlier, and then you making it okay, giving whoever's listening the okay that it's okay to be at number 5, right? To teach the 1 through 4, because you're teaching them, and that's sort of how we create this ecosystem that I
Yeah.
know Brownstone and I'm focused on. And how do we create an ecosystem amongst ourselves to uplift our communities economically
Yeah.
as well? So I appreciate you for
Thank you.
being
This has been
here.
fun.
Yes, thank you so much. And until next time.
Yeah. Until next time.
All righty, y'all. Thanks for joining. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, like, and share so that others will learn about Brick by Brick by the Brownstone Experience. You can also learn more about our guests by going to our website, The Brownstone Experience.